Recording is in progress.
Okay, good evening. This is a special meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on Subdivision Regulation Rewrite. It is Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. Commissioners present currently are Alvin Hill, Brian Santos, and Joseph Perotti Brown.
All right, let me get the screen share going. You got that?
Yep.
Oh, here comes Poplawski too. All right, so we've got 4 of the core working group. Very good. All right, so let me move this. I still hate working on this laptop. How do I collapse this? That's better, I guess. Okay, so picking up where we left off, section 9, energy conservation, which is a shortish section. And then we've got some general comments from me, from Dave Held, some stuff that Alvin contributed, but let's just start by reading the section because it's very short, so it lends itself to reading first and then going back. Section 9, energy conservation, letter A, applicant's responsibility. The applicant shall establish in the application that in the preparation of the final subdivision plan, he has considered the use of passive solar energy techniques, which would not significantly increase the cost of the housing to the buyer after tax credits. Oh, here comes something else too. The cost of the housing to the buyer after tax credits, subsidies, and exemptions. An analysis and report concerning these types of factors may be required if deemed necessary by the commission. Letter B, techniques, passive solar techniques and site design techniques which maximize solar heat gain, minimize heat loss, and provide thermal storage within a building during the heating season, and minimize heat gain and provide for natural cooling during the cooling season shall be considered. These techniques include 1, house orientation and siting, so that the building is sited as close to the north lot line as possible to increase yard space for better owner control of shading. 2, street and lot layout, so that the maximum number of building lots are placed on the south slopes. 3, landscaping by showing the location of any new trees with their mature height, including canopy, and the planning of landscaping to facilitate the use of solar collectors and otherwise increase solar heat gain or shade protection as appropriate. So that's the entire section as it exists. And now let's go back and look at the comments. So just as a general, about the whole thing is, is it possible, or possibly a better question is, what are the possibilities to incentivize for inclusion of renewable energy measures in the plan? I don't have the answer to that. This comment, which was submitted by Dave Held, and he says see comments above, but that's for something way up there in the open space. But his contention is that this is outdated given today's building codes and construction materials and methods. Also, as noted above and as hinted at, it's never really done, meaning these notations that are required, the actions aren't necessarily followed through on. It's just a note on the plan. This made sense in the 1970s when this clause was added to a lot of regulations, and today it's not necessary. It's also important to remember that lot layouts are conceptual and to demonstrate suitability for development. If the buyer wants to build a passive solar house, they'll find the perfect lot, but 99.99% of builders and homeowners don't care. Today's builders can construct a net zero energy home on just about any lot, conforming to the dimensional requirements of the zoning regulations. And this is the comment that I had put in that he responded to, which is that I was curious whether this standard is observed on applications. And then Alvin had sort of rewritten this.
Indeed.
Yeah, so, and I'll read what Alvin rewrote for A, and then because it's a lot of reading right in a row, we'll go back and sort of discuss these top pieces, and then we'll move on to B. Alvin's suggestions for A, applicant's responsibility. with a formal application, the applicant shall, in the preparation of the final subdivision proposal, entertain the use of passive solar energy technologies, which may not significantly increase the cost of the housing to the buyer. With the tax credits, subsidies, and exemptions, the overall benefits to homeownership is financially enhanced. An analysis along with current reports showing these types, oh, here comes Linky. An analysis along with current reports concerning these types of techniques may be required for the commission if deemed necessary. All right, so let's start with this, what says applicant's responsibility, but is sort of a statement of intent almost for the section as well. Observations, gentlemen and ladies?
I agree with David Held's comments that, you know, a lot of this seems outdated back to, you know, when before net zero housing and, you know, all of those principles took place. So your screen is very small, so I can't see Alvin's comments totally on how
I can probably enlarge this, although I'm not really sure where to go on the laptop. Let me see. Oh, here we go. Here we got a zoom.
maybe it's
No, I got a zoom. I got a zoom. Let's take it up.
Am I the only one? Do I just have like everybody displayed?
No, it's kind of small on mine too. I'm so
Yeah,
my
it
own
does-
handwriting is so small that
It might be your Zoom, the way you've got the view panel on, Dave.
I did just enlarge it 20%. Is that helpful at least?
It does look better on my end.
All right.
Yeah.
I will agree with Dave and Dave Held's comment. But I also, on the flip side of that, do not mind saying it again, because I think it's appropriate to kind of suggest that, hey, don't forget about, you know, using these type of
What are you
tech,
fucking doing? Come on, go.
you know, so
Here.
I mean, I do agree that it's kind of dated, but you know, it's nice to say again. And I like the way Alvin kind of wrote it, because it's like, all right, if it's deemed necessary, give us this information. So, you know,
Tira, is everybody muted? All right.
I just found the person that we had to bleed through. I'm sure they wouldn't object under the circumstances.
Yeah, no. It is being recorded, so. thank you.
Yeah, I know. The wonders of technology. Where was I? Yeah, everybody else looks like they're muted. Yeah, I take your points and Dave's points well. You know, from my perspective, I understand why this was in here, right? When was this done? Like 2008?
Yeah.
That's the last time we were doing.
Mhm.
And even then it was probably approaching, like there were better ways to address this. Like I'd like to see it address energy conservation in ways that are modernized. And I think it's fine to refer to passive solar.
Mhm.
Because just because it is an older technique doesn't mean people would out of hand reject it. I mean, you don't know. And
I mean, I guess my bigger question is, okay, if we don't have energy, what's going to go in its place here? Should we just update and say, hey, also consider doing a geothermal system, adding solar panels, make sure you use triple pane glass? Like, what else are we going to put in here, right? And that maybe that bleeds under techniques, but I don't see any.
well, I think it does bleed under techniques, but you know, again, more to your point, and actually just to the original question I had, which is just taking the topic of energy conservation, right? In the prior iteration of this, and in what we're looking at now, the only thing that was really reviewed for energy conservation was the idea of passive solar. So, and I think this gets to what you're saying, Brian. You know, what is the 21st century consideration for energy conservation or renewables to be built into the plan? Although, as Dave Held points out, the subdivision plan itself is conceptual. So on a house-to-house basis, as each of those lots is developed, how does it get feathered in? And let me just say, I don't have the answers to any of these. But I'm happy to have the discussion.
Yeah, Tara, can I say something here?
Of course, Alvin.
Well, I looked at the 1970 writing, and it certainly was way out there in the left field. The way I written it in the operative word in the applicant's responsibility, entertain, not shall, not may, not could, entertain the use of passive solar energy technologies.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at, but we do have shall language in here, so that does make it a little wonky, but let me think this
Well, that's
through.
why I use the word entertain.
Yeah, no, I know.
we-
I get where you're going.
So is Dave Hill is he talking about okay, don't use passive solar energy technology phrasing, use LEED green building standards? Is he asking for that kind of verbiage to be updated?
He isn't really asking anything other than making the observation that
I didn't know if there was
the
sidebar
passive
comment.
solar techniques are
Yeah.
not the
I mean-
standard that is currently observed.
I mean, passive solar is everything I said. You could, it's window types, it's material types. It kind of goes hand in hand with LEED green building technologies today, which is more of a common phrase, but I don't mind the passive. I don't mind the passive.
No, I don't mind it either. I just,
I think it spells out better too when we talk in B in techniques.
all right, so let's go to that.
That's why I rewrote those 3 techniques.
Yeah, let's go to that. Because maybe that'll be clarifying when we get to it. So Alvin suggested alternative for techniques, passive solar technology and site design preparations, which will maximize solar heat gain, which will minimize
In
heat loss,
parentheses.
and provide thermal storage within a building during the heating season and cooling during warmer periods shall be considered. These techniques or methods include the following: 1, house orientation, so that the structure is sited as close to the north line as possible and the structure's orientation along east-west axis. Proper placement allows an increase of yard space for shading in warmer months with an increase of solar gain in colder months. 2, design of street and lot layout orientation so that the maximum number of buildable lots are sited on the south-facing slopes. 3, landscaping shall include the location of any existing trees, new trees with their mature estimated height, including canopy width. The proposed landscaping will facilitate the use of possible future solar collectors, certainly increase solar heat gain and or shade protection as appropriate. And I think that was all of it, right? Yeah. I agree in both cases, Alvin, that what you've suggested is better.
Yeah, I would agree. My suggestion is just change the word passive solar to sustainable design. And that brings it kind of up to 2020
Yeah, that's,
language.
All right, so let's.
so that would be an A, Brian, the use of not passive solar energy, but what?
Sustainable design techniques.
Sustainable design.
Yeah, sustainable. Yep. Design techniques. Yeah. And however that mixes into Alvin's write-up is fine.
Okay. And I do still think, and again, I agree that Alvin's suggestions are better, flat out better than what exists. Still think, I don't know, there's something missing to me in this in terms of what's the incentive? Right? Because, as soon as we're going into that which is voluntary, and whether we use the language shall entertain or, shall demonstrate the potential for or whatever. Other than that we're telling people to consider it, what's going to motivate them to actually do it or build to that standard, other than that they've considered it? if we, the commission or the town, or however you view the entity that this book of regulations represents, believe that these techniques are desirable, how do we share that? How do we share that prioritization with people proposing
Well,
subdivision?
Tira, that's what I tried to do in rewriting. You know, as a building official over the many years I was in Thompson, every time a subdivision came in, the same damn ugly homes, the same parallel shape to every friggin' road in town. They could give a damn, even up to past, even in the 80s and the 90s, about oriented the house for maximum solar gain. It was just their technique as a practice, place the damn house parallel to the road. We don't give a damn if it's facing north or whatever.
Right.
I want contractors and architects to give serious thought to orientating that house for maximum energy use.
And I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. I just feel like
So
there's
we had
missing,
this,
I think there's a
we
missing
had
link.
this in the
That's all.
regulations, but they were never followed.
Yeah.
They just totally ignored them.
I totally understand what you're saying, T. I don't know how to make it incentivized, right? Other than having this document educate people on solar panels and what they really mean, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's as
No.
simple as just making the statement, but like we go out of our way in the open space stuff, which we spent a lot of time on, to describe how, well, in the conservation subdivisions as opposed to the standard open space set aside, to describe the incentive to do the thing which conserves more space. So here we've described a preference that the contractor should consider it. And then it's there. And I think that that's why you don't see it come back to you. Because if they've they've considered it. I don't know. And maybe it's an unsolvable problem. I mean, you can't force, right? And nor do I think we should force.
Yeah, I do like the suggestions that Alvin came up because they're very basic. House orientation, everyone can evaluate that, right?
Yep. Yep.
You know, is it south facing, you know, type of windows, you know, stuff like that. You know, trees and shade covering, so on and so forth. I think those are like, let's call it the 101 items. I
Yep.
think it's well stated, you know,
Okay.
so.
I mean,
think the
we can
problem-
certainly, go ahead, Dave.
I'm sorry, Tara. The problem I have with it is you're telling developers or homeowners, don't cut the trees here, cut the trees here. You might want solar panels on the ground. You might want them on your house. An ROI might not fit for that homeowner. I mean, through Alvin, I'm sure can attest to this, the building codes have created energy efficient houses, you know, through the permitting process. So
Yeah, but
as
not the
limiting-
orientation.
not
It
the
helps,
I agree.
it helps.
Not the
An
orientation.
energy report in the building code will assist the homeowner getting better credits in terms of using cheaper windows or maybe not as much insulation as a trade-off. But just remember, code is minimum. And so aren't some of our regulations minimum.
Right.
We want the architects and the builders to exceed.
I agree they should exceed if practical, but to force it into language that inhibits them from developing because of the land that they're developing or, you know, aesthetics, or just the homes that they're selling, you know, if it's all in the ROI. I mean, I've looked at all this stuff, and if it's not in the ROI, I'm not putting it in, you know, it's so and I'm not saying that you're forcing them. I just think that we need to be cautious on how we suggest that they approach this. And we can't be telling them, you know, don't cut trees here, don't, you know, I just think that it infringes on what they're trying to accomplish as well. Suggestions are suggestions. And, you know, I just think we need to be cautious on how we lay this out.
So let me ask another question. Would this section be more appropriate as an appendix where kind of like the design guidelines and the zoning regulations, they're not prescriptive, but you can take real time to describe the stuff that Santos was talking about, you know, some of which, by the way, is building codes, right? Which wouldn't approach what zoning governs at all, but would sort of be packing it into the document in a way that is not prescriptive, but strongly suggestive and can be updated, you know, like the convention maybe that you can update appendices as technology change without sort of the whole rigmarole of the actual regulatory language. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I mean,
I think it does.
yeah, I mean, if
Yeah, I
you,
could go along with that.
unless there was a, you know, some sort of an incentive, a rebate through the town tax credits or something like that. I think, you know, in the A, it says the applicant shall establish the application that in the preparation of the final subdivision plan, they have considered the use of sustainable design techniques. Well, that's, you know, how do you prove that? You can prove
Yeah,
that
that was part of it. That was part of what I was trying to get at as well, Dave. So peel out of this.
I mean, all Alvin and Brian's comments are all good. It's just, you know, where I don't think they fit right here. I think that it's, like you said, an appendix to something else.
Yeah, I'm on board with the appendix, because these things are constantly changing. So I don't mind having it taken out of this so we can update it later and kind of have it like a living and breathing document in the future. I think that makes sense.
Okay. Well, look at that. We made a decision that made our life easier. I love that. All right, so I'll do that. And when I peel that out into the appendices, what I'll do is I'll go into some of that stuff that I sent you guys before, like that sustainable zoning code website that I look at sometimes, which has a lot of great case studies in there. And there may indeed be an analog, you know, that we can look to for that kind of guideline that's a lot more fleshed out. Because that's the other thing I don't like about this. It's like 3 paragraphs with, you know, again, just this little suggestion, but then no mechanism either by which the contractor is held accountable or by which the commission can really judge. So, okay. All right, we made a decision.
Do
I
any
like
other
that.
towns, I mean, you're familiar with other towns. Is there any other towns that
some-
offer incentives for net zero or?
Sometimes I'm familiar with other towns, Dave, but I'm not in this case.
Okay.
But it's also worth looking into for sure.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, here's an exciting topic: bonding for public improvements. And I don't think we had a ton of comments here, but let's just go through it because we've been fooled before by not having a ton of comments and then read through and gone, oh my God, this is terrible. We'll try to do it as quickly as we can. Section 10, bonding for public improvements. The applicant has the option of either constructing public improvements depicted on an approved plan or bonding public improvements. Such public improvements include proposed roads and drainage, improvements to existing roads and drainage, erosion and sediment controls, proposed utilities, and other work necessary for public or private use, such as open space, recreation, access roads or paths, lighting, fencing, etc. Okay, seems fairly straightforward. Number 1, form of surety. And for those of you guys who do deal with, you know, bonding and what is appropriate, I'm leaning on you guys heavily here to say, you know, what makes sense here. If anything stands out and looks hinky, call it out. Form of surety. For the purposes of these regulations, the form of surety for a bond, which may be provided and accepted by the commission, is as follows: a bond together with the pledge of a passbook savings account or a cash deposit with the town of Thompson. Pledge of savings account. Bond secured by a passbook savings account shall be accompanied by a savings account passbook. a withdrawal slip in the amount of the bond properly endorsed and made payable to the town of Thompson, a letter from the bank acknowledging that the account has been assigned to the town for a period established for the construction or installation of the improvements plus 1 year. Cash deposit, bonds, oops, ooh, what did I do? What did I do? I don't know what I did. Something happened. Are you guys still seeing a screen? Because I'm all,
Yeah, I can see it.
all right,
Now I can't.
no, I just stopped because something wonky happened with mine. I got to pull it back up. Oh, I see. I accidentally minimized it. All right, there we go. Good Lord. I only sit in front of a computer all day, right? You'd think. Anyway, 3, cash deposit. Bonds secured by a cash deposit with the town shall be treated as follows. Certified check, cashier's check or cash shall be delivered to the treasurer of the town of Thompson for the amount of the bond. The town shall deposit said sum in a specified and separate bank account earmarked by the name of the surety to the bond in the name of the town of Thompson. The deposit shall be in a savings account drawing standard short-term interest. The surety shall use, go ahead.
I'm sorry, were you finished with that?
No, but go ahead.
I think we amended that to have insurance, insurance bonds from insurance companies.
Yeah, we did. I was just gonna say that
Yeah.
we amended this, I don't know.
A couple years ago.
But
Yeah,
but probably just in the zoning regulations? or
No,
in the-
no, we amended it here too.
All
No,
right.
it's subdivision amendment.
yeah, it was for the surety bonds through.
Sure, that's the word I'm looking for, surety bonds,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, because apparently that edit didn't make it into any of our copies, because
Yeah.
this is what's online right
It
now.
was amended. I remember when we were doing Madison Avenue, we changed it to include surety bonds, so.
Okay, so,
We'd have to look that up.
yeah, we would.
Yeah, I have it in the office.
Okay, I'm just
Go
gonna
through
make a note
tomorrow.
here. Check with Cindy for the amended surety bond.
And honestly, I don't know if we changed anything. I think we just added verbiage to the
Yeah,
surety.
we added it, yeah.
And what is it that you think you added, B?
Surety bonds.
Yeah, we just allowed the use for surety bonds.
Okay.
Yep. So they didn't have to come up with cash or like everything else here.
Oh, so just adding C here. I see what you're saying.
Yep.
So let me change this note. Okay. Thank you, Cindy. All right, I didn't see anything else in this paragraph that was anything to be concerned about. Computations of costs. This does come up, I think, periodically, so let's look at it.
Yeah.
Prior to the approval of any subdivision or
Sarah,
re-subdivision.
I'm sorry, just
Go
do me
ahead.
a favor and delete the apostrophe in its
Where do you see that?
in section 3. The surety shall use his, her, or its taxpayer ID number.
Oh. The inappropriate apostrophe.
All right, the meeting's over. I found it.
Good, Joe.
I can sleep tonight. I've killed an inappropriate apostrophe. Okay, back to computations of costs. Prior to the approval of any subdivision or re-subdivision plan and before proceeding with any work or the filing of the approved subdivision or re-subdivision plan, the subdivider shall review the scope of the roads, public utilities, and services to be completed to fulfill the conditions of the subdivision or re-subdivision plan, hereinafter referred to collectively as improvements, with the commission, who will review the subdivider's estimates of the cost of construction and will determine the type and amount of the surety to be furnished by the subdivider to guarantee the completion of the improvements. The performance bond shall increase in the amount of 5% per year after the third year to compensate for inflation costs until improvements are completed. The performance bond shall be in the form of a passbook, blah, 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 blah. No building permit for any building in the subdivision shall be issued prior to the completion of the required public improvements and the acceptance of those improvements by the Director of Public Works. Does anything stand out to anybody there? Does that all feel fairly standard? Do we observe it in this way?
I mean, the only thing that stuck out to me is 5% after the third year.
That kind of stuck out to me too.
I mean, it's kind of a low percentage for 3 years of passing. But I'm also trying not to kill it here either, because the thing that is not really clear is what is the real value. So we can come up with a value that we feel comfortable with, and then it's 5% of that value. So I don't know. That was the only thing that stuck out at me.
Yeah, I mean, but has that even been your practice? Does anybody know?
I don't remember ever doing that, but I haven't been on the commission for 3 years, so.
No, because we haven't done that many subdivisions the last 4 years since I've been here.
So who are the long-term guys? Lenky, you still there?
I can't recall.
Yep, I'm here. Joe
So-
and I came on at the same time, and from some of the subcommittee meetings we had in the beginning in the 13, 14, 15 and everything, I don't remember anything like that. Do you, Joe?
I can't recall any time we've done that.
So if it's not the practice, you have two choices. Either you acknowledge that it's not the practice and you strike it, or you make it the practice going forward. And which that is for you guys to decide. But you know, I'll note that here, what you think is the case.
Oh, my question would be to either Dave P. or and Brian is that how was I gonna put it to them? I know this is your forte in business or what you do. What is your general feeling on it between the two of you?
I'm okay with it as it written. I'm all right with it. It's just, that was the only thing that stuck out to me was the 5%.
So,
Well, so
okay.
it's one thing to be all right with it, but the question is, if you've never done it.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know what to say about that. You know?
Yeah, that kind of bothers me that, you know, maybe this was an intent, but if the town is proceeding without this bond increased 5% per year after year 3, you know, why is that? Is it because commissions in the past have been unaware that this has been there and now we're aware and we're going to continually go back to developers? Or is it that nobody had the appetite or the bandwidth to go after, you know, to do it?
So let's go back to Madison Ave and
Yep.
their bond. And for the Madison Ave came in before I came in. So Madison Ave was improved subdivision. And did you require a bond? You required a bond at that time, did you guys?
Yeah, I
Joe?
remember. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, Cynthia.
Yes.
What can you give me a definite when Madison Ave was actually, what was it, around 013, 014 when that whole thing started? Just to refresh my memory.
Yeah, that's probably a good date. I mean, I can't really, you know.
Not day, time, year.
Yeah.
Like 013, 014, 015.
Well,
Does it
you and Joe were the only ones who were
Yeah,
on the
you-
commission
yeah.
that long, so you would know
Yes,
better than Cindy.
Well, no, I mean, if she's got the paper, if there's the paperwork on it, because when he came in to get the, so he could get the permits to build 3 houses, okay? And we had that whole stuff going on, That's why we, like Brian just said, we were all in on that, Brian and Dave and everything, where we increased his bond to like, what was it, 110,000 or something like that?
Yes, so my question is did he already have a bond and we increased the bond? So that's some
Yes, we
research.
did. I think it went from like 60,000 or something like that, up to 100.
All right,
because-
I can check with Orla tomorrow.
Now, the rate,
Okay.
that's interesting. The raising of the bond, I do remember, but it wasn't based on a formula. It was based on,
This is a calculation of construction costs.
Right.
Correct. So see, that's where, well, maybe that's what I'm trying to get at is, okay, with the 5% or whatever, would 5% be efficient based on like a performance bond? Because he didn't do nothing for almost, 3 years or something, like 2 or 3 years. There was nothing
Right.
done. All of a sudden, he's got the opportunity to sell 3 house lots, because it came out of the woodwork, but the road wasn't done right. This wasn't done right. So was that bond sufficient enough to cover the cost of anything going forward? Am I kind of correct there, Brian?
Yeah, no, I remember coming up with those figures. Yeah, that's all
Yeah.
correct. The one thing that he wanted was his cash bond back, and we switched it to a surety bond. That was the other-
Correct. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
But see, that's something that we really need to sit down, because, what was done before Joe and I, you're right, maybe they didn't know it was there, or it was never really brought out. But, the whole Madison situation actually kind of opened a can of worms. So now we need to put the worms back in and cover it and keep it where, going forward for any future subdivision or anything, we need to protect not just the town, but, the people there or whatever. And, are we going to allow a cul-de-sac, and how's that going to work and everything? So,
Well,
here we go again.
I'm just going to answer the question too with Cindy and Tiria's. I mean, I wasn't present. I'm not trying to throw Joe or John under the bus. I think the 5% was probably forgotten about, right? But
Probably.
let's just remember what this is for, right? It's to protect the town in case this guy goes out of business, right?
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
It's not like the 5% like we're losing money or anything like that. That's not what. It's just like an incentive, increase the bond without having any type of controversy about why we're doing it, right? So it's not like the town is losing money because the 5%, he's still there. We just increased his bond, so everything's fine. So what? It was forgotten about, but I think moving forward we should remember this kind of stuff.
Well, Cindy,
Yeah.
could it be as simple as putting it on the reapplication? That it's a checkbox, they come in, they know they're paying, they're increasing 5% on the bond.
Yeah, it can be put on.
Oh, you are so smart.
There it is, Poplawski, bada bing, bada
Oh.
boom.
Just
Yeah.
trying
What
to
do you
automate it, make it a little simple when we're all not here.
That's
Well,
exactly it, Dave.
Damn it, I'm voting for you, Poplawski. I'm voting for you, buddy.
They're putting tape over my name on the signs. You.
Oh, they have an arrow down? They have an arrow down to the next guy? Oh, okay.
Duct tape right across
Oh,
my
okay,
name.
perfect.
While you're,
So is that what I'm saying here? Add checkbox to the reapplication form to review bond
Yep.
after a given period? I mean, how often do they reapply? Do they reapply annually? Do they come back after 3 years? What's the?
I'll have to find out when do, I don't know the date when subdivisions
it's not a
expire.
reapplication, is it?
What was that?
Well, a renewal, I think. Is what we're-
Renewal, yeah. It must be a renewal they have to file.
On what, subdivision?
Is there?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's
I don't know
down.
why they're working
Are
with
we,
us.
we're thinking of graveling now.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No,
Really.
subdivisions
Why
have
would
to
you
be
need to
renewed.
reapply for a subdivision?
Right.
That's like reapplying for a building permit. Why would you need to do that?
Subdivision applications typically
to
run
be
with the
renewed.
land.
No, well, subdivision applications have to be renewed.
Okay, nice thing.
So, and I have to find out that date for you. So
Okay.
I'll just make a note of that.
Okay,
It's gotta be in here somewhere.
And
While
because
we're here in this section,
if they're not renewed then the commission has to vote to discontinue the subdivision.
Oh, that's right.
You guys did that a while ago.
Yeah, yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Cindy.
Okay, all right, thanks, Cindy.
While we're here in this section and talking about Madison Ave, right? How often, right? I remember one of their things was the road, right? And what they wanted to do, you know, they only wanted to finish it to a certain level because they were going to keep bringing the trucks back over it while they were continuing to work on it, right?
They wanted to keep they wanted to keep the base coat, which is easier to repair than it is to try to repair a finished product, you know, the finished coat.
Right, exactly. And will that be a situation that will come up again? And how does that jive with the last sentence in this section?
Good point.
So let's read that last sentence. No building permit for any building in the subdivision shall be issued prior to the completion of the required public improvements and the acceptance of those improvements by the Director of Public Works. You're absolutely right, Joe. That was the thing that we went round and round and round for months and months. And, you know, on the one hand, the logic suggested by what John referred to, that, you know, the top coat is harder to repair while you've got heavy construction vehicles going in and out. It makes sense for it to be, you know, the base coat or some level of base coat. But here it is that there's no way to give a building permit out. Construction guys, how do we improve this? What do we do here?
Joe, you took the words right out of my mouth, because, you know, it's to do a full road, final road, you're probably talking $80, $100 a foot to get that to final, you know, drainage, depending on what the cost is. I think that what we did at Madison Avenue was acceptable. You know, it helped him. We didn't lose anything by doing that, by, you know, letting him keep it in binder and you know, get a couple house lots out of it. So I think that it doesn't, somehow the wording should be, it doesn't relinquish the bond, but the commission can consider, I wouldn't call it partial acceptance, partial use. But you want to keep the Director of Public Works in that
Right.
statement too.
I'm going to make another statement after we've sort of worked through this problem that, but let's work through the problem first.
The thing with Tara, excuse me, but
Go ahead, John.
Dave brought out a good point. There's already been some work done on Madison Ave Road where they had to repair the base coat because of the culverts. Wherever they crossed, they had to cut that out and repair it, and was all repaired. You can match a base coat and keep the consistency of a base coat, even if you dig up certain spots. When they recompact the dirt and then put the base back down, you can keep that level pretty close. So when you put the finished coat on, or the finished product, it levels it out, the finished product. The base coat, all it does is your base binder, so nothing really breaks apart. The finished coat is so fine that it could break up on regular dirt. You put it right down on regular dirt. When you drive over it, and up here in New England, you know, you got hot and cold, winter, summer, spring, the ground moves. So your finished coat would break apart faster than a base coat. So with the base coat, you can always repair it before you put a finish coat to get it. So when you do put the final product on, it's going to pretty much last good 10 years. You know what I'm saying? Roughly speaking. That would be pretty basic. So the base coat would be the one that you have to stick with first before. But again, here we go. you're gonna need a good road for it. It has to be some asphalt so they could get a loan from the bank, because the bank won't let the money go because it's not considered a town road or whatever. So at least asphalt down, it can be considered a town road, but partially. Would that be somewhat correct, Dave?
Yeah, Tara, how's this sound? I'm writing as John's talking. I'm trying to pay attention to him too, but I'm just throwing this out there. Partial consideration of acceptance may be considered if approved by the DPW director and the commission. This partial acceptance would not relinquish bond responsibilities that are implied by these regulations, or something like that.
Or implemented by these regulations?
No, implied is the more correct use
Applied is
there.
better, okay.
Yeah,
Well, hey, you just got a guy that lives in the woods over here talking, so.
I'm just, I think we could, like Joe says, we got to call it out so that,
Right,
Yeah,
You know,
I had written one up too on the side here. Here's mine. I said, building permits and associated certificates of occupancy for any buildings within the subdivision shall be evaluated on a case-by-case basis in order to meet certain required public improvements, such as, but not limited to, binder courses and drainages.
I'm going to ask you to repeat that again because I've got fast fingers, but they're not that fast.
Yeah,
Building
I put
permits and associated certificates of occupancy for buildings within the subdivision.
shall be evaluated on a case-by-case basis in order to meet certain required public improvements, such as, but not limited to, binder courses and drainage systems, period. Those improvements must be accepted by the Director of Public Works.
and the P and Z.
but if, the problem with Madison, Brian, is we didn't see the building permits or anything else. They went to
Yeah,
the selectmen.
that's true.
No, the building permits went their normal route. The only thing that went to the
Occupancy.
selectmen guys was that we gave the approval for him to get the building, the applications or whatever, if I'm correct. Cynthia should know that too. So he could get so the people could get the loans to do, the bill. But the thing that the whole problem was, there was only supposed to have been 3 building permits or whatever.
Three,
issue.
3 certificates of occupancy.
Right. And
That's-
then anything after that, he had to come back or whatever it was, and he never did. And then 3 more houses went up. 3 more applications were applied for a building permit and et cetera. With that, because that's what Mike Krugel was always complaining about, and he had a legitimate complaint. He never came back to say, I want to add 3 more houses. Everything before that was 3 houses, make sure the road was sufficient, keep he didn't have to put the finished coat on, but a good base was supposed to be down. So at least it would be acceptable for us as well as going forward for the banks.
So
people
let me
could-
ask another question, and it is related. Did that process become more convoluted and more
Correct.
difficult to resolve because of this last sentence? And
I
if
would-
and if we fix this last sentence by adjusting in one of these ways that we've suggested, does that prevent a future problem on the scale of the Madison Avenue?
Yeah, I think the last sentence stinks. It's saying, hey, complete all the roads before we give you a building. That's what it says, right? So,
I agree with you, Brian.
I mean, I feel like just strike building permits and associate, just start with certificates of occupancy for buildings within the subdivision shall be evaluated on case by case. Because we were not giving them certificates of occupancy until they did something that was acceptable to us for the
Correct.
road. Right?
And they couldn't get financed. That's why the the home purchasers could not purchase the home from the developer until the road was accepted. So they couldn't get the money to pay him.
Yeah.
Until that road was accepted, they had an occupancy permit.
Correct.
Okay, so I think we've solved the problem of the sentence, and now I'm going to ask my big finale question. What does that even have to do with the bond? Why is it in a section on bonding?
Well,
Good point.
go
Good
ahead.
point.
I
Well,
mean, I'm not saying that we're getting rid of the text. I'm saying it doesn't belong here, and I'm happy that we've solved the problem. But
Well,
this doesn't
the-
belong here.
The bonding is intended that if they don't finish the road, so then the town is responsible for it. So that's the intention of the bond, if they don't finish whatever, all those
Right,
things.
no,
you
no, no,
pointed
I'm
out.
not questioning what the intent of the bond is. I understand the intent of the bond. My question is, this provision within this item,
Yeah,
the simple statement, no building permit for any building in the subdivision, I mean, even when we change it, no building permit for any building in the subdivision shall be issued prior to the completion of the required public improvements, blah, 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 blah. There is no reference to the bond process in that. Therefore, this item is out of sequence, even if we fix it, which I'm glad that we just did. But my further
that's-
contention is that it doesn't belong in item 4, computation of costs.
That's
I
why
could
in
put some-
mine here, I put down this partial acceptance does not reduce the bond. I tied it back to the bond
Okay, there
Mm.
you go. So let's get that here.
because I think that needs to be clear that even though we're accepting or doing a partial acceptance, the bond is not reduced. The bond remains in effect with the escalator and everything else that's prior to this.
Okay.
Dave, that's a good.
So what I
Dave,
would
that's
then further
a good point.
posit is that we separate those thoughts so that it makes more sense to have it in a section on bonding. And then, as you say, Dave, tying it back, this partial acceptance does not reduce the bond. The bond remains in effect until all required improvements are completed. Better?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm gonna leave
Whatever
my-
they said, I'll go along with it.
I
So
love
the
it when
only
we all get along.
And I think it fits in here is, and I'll use Madison Avenue for a scenario. So we had people came in that were on the state road that had washout, had some other things happen. Do we require a certificate of insurance from the developer? So I know we got the bond, we got everything bonded that they're doing. Do we have a certificate of insurance that says, hey, you know, I have the insurance to cover me should I wash out someone else's property on 193? Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Without going through the very cumbersome process of scrolling through this document on the laptop, I have it in the back of my head that is under the general requirements for subdivisions.
Okay.
If
All right.
anybody has a copy of an actual copy they can refer to of either the rolling edited draft or even the original,
I've got the original right in front of me.
which of course, as we know, is a hot mess, but
Right.
It just
at
makes
least,
sense to have some sort of reference to certificate of insurance here.
Think about
Bond.
application requirements.
I don't think it's in there.
So
But
there's
then on
there's
the other
nothing
hand-
that talks about general liability insurance, which is what Dave is talking about.
there is not, you are confirming that by having looked, which is fine. I mean, it's not fine. It's, if that is the answer, that is the answer.
There needs to be something else besides this bond. This bond is covering what they're doing, and if we have to go in and repair it, but.
Let me go up here. Hold on, let me add a
Maybe
note
a
up here.
control.
Dave, you brought
just
up a good point.
a find function, Tira.
What'd you say, Joe?
Can you just do a find function and look for?
Probably, but look, I'm old. I've got limited new functions I can handle on this laptop.
We can
Yeah.
proceed. I just want to bookmark it that if it
Yeah,
is
that's-
somewhere, it needs to be here, at least.
Side note. Search for references to COI requirements. Where
I
to
don't- Joe-
include
Joe.
if not found. Okay.
I don't remember any of that in our previous term, do you? How,
I don't think so, but
You know, it's entirely possible that I've just seen so many RFPs and this, that, and the other thing that require the COI that I'm just projecting that we have it in here.
Well, Cindy's quiet,
That's not
so
impossible, so.
doesn't- You know, Cindy's quiet, so I don't think we do. If anyone knew, it would be Cindy. They'd have to show it to her.
That's true, that's true.
Sorry, sorry to weigh in on this. I wasn't weighing in because I'm not as, have not been involved in your subdivision regulations like I am in the zoning regulations. But yes, you're right. We have not, asked for a liability insurance policy.
but is there anything in place in our regs? About that?
Well, she's saying she's not as familiar, so.
Yeah, but I've never seen, I mean, I've had to go through the regs a few times, yeah, but I've never seen that. I've never required that of anybody.
Well, if you didn't require it, that means it
It does-
really
yeah.
doesn't
Well-
exist or.
Well,
it's prob-
you do have your checkpoints. I know that the people that were before me, you know, like Alvin and especially Alvin, he did some really checkoff lists that, you know, I found, and I've checked off applications on his checkoff list. And I never saw that. Alvin, did you ever come across that?
I didn't quite understand that, Cindy. What?
A liability insurance on the subdivision applications approval. Do they?
I've never seen,
Yeah,
never seen any of that.
yeah.
That's right, he was. That's right. I'm sorry, apologize for that, but yeah, you were right. He was the CEO for a while, but you were also the building inspector for a while. So
Mm.
if anybody's got the knowledge of that, of past, it would be Alvin. So
It does seem like kind of a glaring deficit that there wouldn't be any requirement for a COI, but maybe it's covered by other things. Maybe that gets covered at some other point in the evolution of a subdivision application, or perhaps just in being a developer. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't
You know,
know.
allowed it.
The
I
best
just
person,
put
the
someone
best
in
person
there.
to ask would be Jason LaValle. I mean, he's got a lot going on in town too.
I haven't talked to Jason in a while. So yeah, maybe I'll reach out to him.
I just know that Madison Avenue, that one resident came in and it was washing out, it was coming on 197 and washing out his property, and it was a state road. And, you know, he was getting significant washout. And I just.
You're
kind of
absolutely
think
right.
that, you know, we should really consider that, so.
Dave's got a good point.
Mm.
You really got a good point. That's something like I said, I don't recall any of that.
Well,
previous.
I will go back through the document and I will go back through our document and see if we plopped it in there. But if it wasn't in the original, it's probably not in this. And then the question is where to put it. And
Correct.
my inclination would just be under general requirements of the application to demonstrate a COI. I mean, that seems sensible, right?
Well, I just don't know legally, do we name the town? I guess I'm lobbing it up there. I don't know.
Well, I'll take a look. That's,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
I mean, this document's supposed to be protective, right? Protective of the town's interests as well as the developer's interests. So, you know, some things are more protective of the town, and that would be one.
Or another property owner
Or another property owner, right?
that's bordering the subdivision.
Right.
It just needs to
That-
name someone. The COI needs to name someone. I'm assuming it'd be the town of Thompson.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll go back through.
Thank you.
Moving on, number 5. Look at that. We got through like a page and a half in an hour. Number 5, failure to complete improvements. Where surety has been posted and required improvements have not been completed within the time required, the commission may thereupon declare the subdivider to be in default and withdraw the total amount of surety from the pledged bank account and proceed to complete the improvements. All costs the town may accrue in completing the work include, I think that should be including the value of the time of its public officials, employees, and attorney fees shall be debited against the funds so withdrawn. If for some reason the security is insufficient to pay for all costs to the town, the subdivider/owner shall remain liable for such costs in excess of the security. That seems fairly straightforward to me. Does that raise any flags for anybody? Hearing no reply. 6, partial releases. When and if the commission determines that a substantial portion of the improvements called for in the final plan approved by the commission has been completed, it may recommend one or more partial releases of a portion of the security. The balance of the security at all times shall be sufficient to guarantee completion of all the remaining improvements. Such partial release shall be authorized by the commission. Releases granted shall be in amounts in excess of $10,000. Also seems somewhat straightforward. We happy?
Tara, can you go back to 5? I'm sorry to go back, but I'm just,
No, of course. That's why we're here.
so that subdivider insufficient to pay for all costs to the town. The subdivider owner shall remain liable for such costs in excess of the security. Should that be, do we have to get granular in that and list like COIs, insurance policy? I mean, you know, or LLC, I just, it almost begs to have a legal look through of that to make sure that the town is covered should that bond not be sufficient, that we have all means to recover the excess. And it wouldn't hurt for legal review. Just,
Yeah. Well, everything goes to Rich before it's finalized anyway, but
Okay. Yeah, that's true. But just to call it out so that there might be
Yeah.
some,
so what are we saying here? Is there a way to spell out what the various remedies
yeah.
the town
Well,
could
the other-
pursue?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You're only allowed to go after the bond of the value of the bond, right? But the problem is, like, that I deal with is, well, if somebody goes under, there's 2 parts to a bond. There's a performance bond and then there's a payment bond. So if that sub has subcontractors underneath them and they didn't get paid, the bonding company would, somebody's gonna have to pay for those subs, right? So I don't know where I'm going with this because I don't think the town would probably be liable for subs that didn't get paid. They would just be shit out of luck. We're just trying to finish the work that we have, that we want performed. So I guess it's fine to check with legal. I'm just not sure that there's any real road to go down. We have to come up with the value that we feel is fair, and that's what they go get bonded for. And that's what's going to pay for all these things that are listed there: public officials, employees, attorney fees. So we're going to chew into that pretty quickly, right? Anyway.
That's exactly what I'm saying, Brian. It's,
Yeah.
it might not be enough, and I want to make sure the town's covered to, you know, as much as can be recovered. And
Yeah.
I don't know if subdivider owner, just calling that out is enough, you know.
Oops. Scrolled away from my.
Thanks, Tara.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we were at partial releases and it sounded like everybody was okay there. 7, release of surety. The surety shall not be released until the following conditions have been met. A, all improvements of the subdivision or re-subdivision have been approved and or accepted by the designated town official. All required monuments must have been set and a sworn affidavit filed by the land surveyor employed by the subdivider stating required monuments have been accurately set as required by these regulations. See, the
Well,
applicant, go ahead.
On B, you just said all required monuments. They do not always use monuments. They use pipes now. They put pipes in. So unless you want to make sure that we keep the monuments in, that every time they do surveying, put in a property, they have to put some type of a concrete monument, a little 4x4 in each corner, because 90% of the time they use pipe, and then it's designated on the plot plan
Or
or
T-bar.
subdivision.
Yeah, they use like T-bar or something too.
Yeah. Well, whatever, or a piece of pipe with a flat stock steel on it, with a marking on it there, like J&D Civil Engineering, some of them do that. When they put it in the ground and they mark that spot, that's the center of the plot. Something like that.
So that
Because-
needs to be adjusted one way or another.
Correct, because not every surveying, anybody that does surveying, putting in for doing subdivision for plots and everything, I gotta put in monuments.
I would just say all required monuments / markers. Because you could have a marker as a rebar stick.
Yes, yeah, but now you gotta be a little bit more specific on a monument. I mean, on a not a monument. You just said it too.
Marker?
Marker. What kind of a marker are you gonna, you're gonna have to require? What kind of a marker would you think would be suitable is the best word I'm looking for.
Non-destructible marker.
All right, go ahead.
Didn't we review a section on monumenting earlier?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
All right, well, I'll go back.
That goes back, yeah. What section now?
It's like the last time we met, I want to say. There were references
No, it
to
was before that.
monumenting.
So what are the markers that they're using now? It's just a rebar, whatever,
A pipe, whatever.
drove into the ground 3-4 feet? Is that what's going on in town?
Normally, it's the pipe is usually about 32 inches to 3 feet.
Yeah.
And then
And
they have to leave at least at least no more than 6 inches above ground. So you can spot it.
Tira, I think it's in more than one spot, but it is in the open space section.
And something is ringing a bell that somebody pointed me towards the statutes, and it may have been Alvin, to double check
Oh.
the difference between subdivision and re-subdivision. And I believe that in re-subdivision, there are specific requirements for monumenting that are not mentioned for plain old subdivisions. That is ringing a very strong bell, and it was recent.
Couple meetings ago, 3
Maybe. I think it was like the last one. Well, because the last one was open space and conservation subdivisions, but there was something about re-subdivision. Oh, it was because we were talking about it was because we were talking about banking open space. I think it came up in that general discussion. Does that
Yeah.
sound familiar to you, Joe?
banking open space. That's a trump card for the guy to keep moving it around.
So, yeah, I mean, a couple sections before that, it's in delineation or marking of open space.
That was it. It was in delineation. Right. That's why it became a topic in a recent meeting. That has to be what prompted me. Oh, well, that's a side point anyway. You can tell it's getting late for me. All right, so that was B on monuments. C, the applicant's engineer or surveyor has certified to the town through the commission and through submission of detailed as-built plans and the as-built certification form in Appendix D. Check the citation on Appendix D. notation. That the improvements are in accordance with the construction plans of the subdivision or re-subdivision. As-built plans shall include the site development plan, a grading plan, and a construction plan as described elsewhere in these regulations. Such plans shall show any modifications or changes made, including those made during construction. Let me scroll up here a little bit. This is the conditions under which the bond is released, right?
Yes.
Okay. D, warranty deed for new streets and street stubs, also road frontage along existing town roads where no street line had been established, must have been executed and delivered to the selectmen with a copy to the commission. Title to said roads shall be unencumbered. E, maintenance bond, the applicant shall be required to file a maintenance bond with the town prior to the dedication of the town, to the town of public improvements in order to assure the satisfactory, why is this not moving? Satisfactory condition of the completed improvements until April 30th of the following year. It seems a little rando, but whatever. Or such later date as shall be necessary to correct any defects that may have developed after the winter season. Said bond may provide for snow removal on roads until acceptance of said improvements by the town. The maintenance bond shall be in an amount of not less than 25% of the costs of public improvements.
Whew.
Right of way of entry for correction of violations. The applicant shall file a written agreement executed by the owner of the premises and the applicant in a form approved by the town attorney, which permits the town of Thompson or its officials and employees. Oh, another.
Mhm.
Oh, killing me. Or independent contractors to enter upon the premises and to perform all work necessary to correct and abate any violations of these regulations and of stipulations with the applicant, which the applicant has made and failed to execute within the required time. Such right of entry to arise upon the certification of such violations by the commission and shall continue for such time thereafter as is required for the town to remedy such default. Maybe it's the way this is laid out on the page. Did that make any sense to anybody? This should just be right of entry, first of all. I think that's why I'm so confused.
Right.
All right, so now, okay, if I was thinking rights of way, and I'm like, what does that have to do with anything? Okay, well, right of entry makes it make more sense. Okay. Attorney approval, any and all bonds with surety agreements, deeds, or such other documents required by these regulations shall be in such form. Just made it worse. These regulations shall be in such form as may be approved by the town attorney. Okay, so those are your conditions for release of the bond.
Have we ever gotten a maintenance bond from anybody?
Nope.
Let's say, I don't, Jesus, this 25%, man. Whew. Okay,
Is that a big chunk of change?
I don't know, it sure does sound like it.
What seems strange about that to me, and maybe I'm just thinking of it in the wrong way, is that so this is a condition to release the bond. So we're releasing a bond and keeping a bond?
Yeah,
Isn't that just a partial release of the bond and then?
I mean, there is a such thing as a maintenance bond, but you should just hold the regular bond until April 30th of the following year. What's the, it's just that the value may change. I don't know. I'm not trying to make it any more complicated. I can't imagine us chasing a new bond.
It does seem sort of like we're just giving somebody their change back or something.
Kind of, Brian, maybe. I'm kind of, when I just heard what you said is, well, what's the difference between a maintenance bond and if they're gonna put up a bond and we use that bond for whatever, they get it back in the end. But if we have to do some type of work or whatever, the bond that we got sitting in the bank right now would be the same thing as a maintenance bond, because you're gonna end up dipping into that to fix whatever has to be fixed.
Yeah, it just seems like,
So why do we
Well,
need,
so let's just use Madison Avenue for another.
here you go.
All right, so
let's just keep beating up on that
let's just keep
subdivision.
on beating them up, right? So let's just say they're done, right? And they want their 100 grand back. So we say to them, okay, well, we'll release whatever.
75,000.
75,000, right? So, and we'll keep the other 25 grand for, maintenance. I'm not an insurance agent, so I don't know if there's like a different rate for a maintenance bond over a P and performance bond. I don't know those details, but maybe there is. I don't know. I don't know. But I would just say, hey, we're gonna hold 25% for till April 30th, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
25 grand or 25.
Let me,
I hate
Look-
stuff that seems extra, right? Like,
right, well, Cynthia, let me ask Cynthia a question. In her years of experience, did you ever have any situation, or is there a difference between what you did in the past, performance bond and a maintenance bond? Could they be both under the same roof?
You're asking me that question, John?
Yes, I did.
My
I'm
past
just
experience before Thompson was Putnam.
yes,
Can I call a
And-
timeout?
And
please, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry, Cindy, I didn't mean to interrupt. If we go down to the next section, it's all about maintenance bonding.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, so let's postpone the discussion of maintenance bond until we've gone through the section. Thank you for looking
right.
ahead, Chairman Joe. But now you can finish your thought anyway, Cindy.
Oh,
What happened in Putnam?
I did not take care of the subdivisions. Fred Wojak took care of the subdivisions.
Okay. Now, what about the rest of the stuff for release of bond? Is anything flagging anybody as hinky here?
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
wise, it all seems fine to
For
me.
bonds that you have released, does this seem consistent with what you have sought? I guess is my simpler question to answer.
I don't think we've released any bonds on subdivisions. The only two real big subdivisions we've had is Madison Ave and Jason's.
Neither of which is done. But there were subdivisions that have been completed prior to those two that Joe and
okay.
John might have experience
Yeah,
of.
but not like honestly, in the 8 years I've been on the commission, I can't think of a ton.
What
Because
about you,
on the-
Mr. Lenke?
I happen to agree with Joe, because she's,
On the
I'm just trying to remember what was going on in the first six and be honest with you, there was I don't even know if there was a subdivision going on back then.
I think like very small
Small one.
subdivisions.
Yeah.
you
Hey,
know.
could I interrupt you guys for just a second? Because I see that a couple of the audience members have like dropped out and come in. I just want to make sure that we're not having any trouble with the connectivity. The person who signed in is NB and Sean.
Yeah.
You guys are getting all this okay? I know I've seen you go in and out a couple times, I think.
So on, we keep using the word re-subdivision in this bonding, but the re-subdivisions, I don't think we've had a re-subdivision where it had to do
Thank
with
you.
road maintenance or any municipal
They wanted to know if it was okay.
facilities that we had to maintain. And that's why they've never been bonded.
Yeah, that's I think a good point, Cindy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. The subdivisions that I think I've been a part of that's exactly it, Cindy.
Yeah.
Okay, so anything else hinky in here before we move on to maintenance bonding, probably?
I would just say in that right of way section or right of entry section, sorry. I love a dash as much as anyone, but can you just make such right of entry its own sentence? I think that will help with readability.
Perhaps. I think dashes don't really have room in technical writing myself.
Was it called a right of way for a reason? So is it, before it's an accepted street, is it a right of way?
Well, it's
Way out.
always a right of way. And remember, not everything's going to be a public street as well. But no, as I read this, this is right of entry for corrections of violations, because that phrase makes sense as a standalone phrase. Right of way of entry seems to me that somebody just constructed that phrase poorly.
Right of way entry. That's how I was reading it. Right of way entry for correction of violations, but that's fine. I just think that's what they were calling it. The right of way was what the classification of the street was, entry for correction of violations. Small thing. No big deal.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Dave, but I don't think that's I just don't think that's what was trying to be said here.
Okay.
You know, I'm going to be looking at all of this tomorrow when I go back and I put the our corrections into the clean draft. So I'll be reading it all again, but I feel pretty confident that that was meant to be right of entry. All right, continuing. Does this not want to do what I want it to do? Oh, there we go. And here we are, maintenance bonding. Yay, section 11. Let's see if we can get through this section, and I think that'll be some good work. Maintenance bonding. A maintenance bond equal to 25% of the cost of improvements accepted by the town will be held until April 30th of the following year after said acceptance, following the release of a performance bond or portion thereof, or town acceptance of improvements. The purpose of the maintenance bond is to protect the town against defective workmanship, materials, or design of improvements. See standard agreement for construction and installation of public improvements and utilities and subdivisions. Question, is that in this document or somewhere else? Where is this?
I thought we made that an appendix.
It might be an appendix. It makes sense to me that it would be, but it's not referred to one here.
Yeah.
So I just want to, this is a note more to myself. Okay. Go ahead.
Alvin, would you like to see a shall or a may there instead of will?
I bet he would.
He's on freeze mode,
Oh, is he locked up? Oh.
So,
but he's smiling though.
so
Yeah,
how do we,
what was the question, Joe?
I already fixed it, Alvin.
The language said will, and I said I think Alvin probably is going to want a shall or a may there.
Exactly. Precisely.
I'm wondering how we're really calculating this 25%, right? Because like it says cost of improvements accepted by the town. So everything is done accepted by the town. It's 25% of what? Maybe it continues on here and it tells me in a couple sentences.
Brian, would it be like the costs that we used to determine the original bond?
I'm going to say no, because
Well, by the time it's theoretically done, you know what the real costs are, right?
yeah, so it's like a portion of the road where, so we're gonna say, oh yeah, potholes that may happen, sidewalks may crack, from snow and ice from you guys not plowing properly. Maybe there's some curbing that gets damaged. I'm just trying to really wrap my head around that. Maybe it'll be more apparent when it's in front of me when we're looking at this, but it seems
All
very.
right, well, let me drop a note here. Cost of improvements calculated how? So then we'll know to go back to it if we need to.
so how, does anybody know how you came up with that April 30th of the following year after said acceptance? Isn't that kind of like arbitrary?
Well, you wanted to winter over. I
Yeah,
think.
it's the start of the, yeah, he's exactly right.
Is that why that is?
Yeah,
it's
it
right
said
after-
it, previous, it said to winter over. One winter, the
Okay,
preceding our April 30th after a winter or something.
That's why
Okay.
I was kind of highlighting potholes, damage of curbs and sidewalks, because.
okay, all right. I
Yeah, so
understand.
so what I don't like about this construction and is a lack of specificity. So what if the guy finishes in
December.
November or early December? Are we only holding it for 4 months, or are we holding it for a year and 4 months?
It's 4 months.
It's 4 months till the following year, April
Yeah.
30th.
Okay.
Right now,
So, but see, you really, and you just raised a good point.
Because
Tara,
winter
is-
damage is not the only damage that occurs.
yeah, that's why I'm curious how that cost of improvements, like,
But you went, but it's winter can create it, but it's when the ground starts to thaw is where you're gonna get all your what we call your damage the most, because your ground is frozen depending on how the winter was. It could be 1 foot of frost, it could be 2 or 3 or whatever. So if the frost, the deeper the frost, the longer the thaw. So they were using April 30th to give you that thaw time, so you would probably see any discrepancies in the asphalt or the concrete, whatever. 4 months is a short term. If that was me, I'd take the 4 months. If I was a developer, and I'd be running faster than I can after that.
So wouldn't you
That's
just, doesn't it just make sense to make it 1 calendar year? Because then regardless of when it's
Correct.
finished, you've been through a winter and a spring and a summer. And so if there's a heavy rain season and the thing washes out,
Look
or
at what we've been going through right now. Look at a lot of the roads on the side for the traveling I've been doing. Some of the roads there've been some good washouts, even in this town. Like there's that one road there, is it Passay Road? There, you go down the road a little ways after the transfer station, you went down the culvert and everything was so well blocked that there was a foot of water going right over the road. That creates a washout. That creates, it'll start getting underneath the asphalt. Next thing you know, it's coming up. So it's just.
So what
it's
do you
just-
guys think? Should we just
Yeah,
change
1
this to
calendar
1
year.
calendar year?
Yeah.
That just
Shall
makes
be
seems
held for 1
so much
calendar
more
year.
logical to me.
I
Yeah.
think it's more logical 1 calendar year.
Yeah, I this way at least you got 1 good year to see what's going to develop out of it.
Yeah.
I'm just giving it to you from my perspective as
No,
I'm the guy that's out there
I think we
fixing.
all agree there. All right, so that was A. B, the developer
Yeah,
shall repair all,
Before we go off A, I'm hung up on the cost of improvements. Determining the 25% of the cost of improvements.
Yeah, I'm hung up on that.
Brand new road.
Yeah, it's brand new. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that that needs a,
I don't know how
I don't
that's.
know what they were thinking there. I mean, if it was a re-subdivision or something, but not even then.
I think improvements has been used in these regulations to mean the creation of roads.
that is correct. That is definitely
Right.
correct. It's not necessarily what we would conventionally think of, I have seen this thing which is bad and I have improved it. The regulations presume that any development is de facto an improvement.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Yep, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay,
Shall we go to B?
B it is.
B it is. The developer shall repair all defects in construction or operation during the period covered by the maintenance bond. The developer's failure to perform needed repairs within a reasonable time when so requested by the Board of Selectmen may result in the town's undertaking the repairs and billing the developer for the cost of repairs. Is it the Board of Selectmen who makes that request? That seems, if anything, that it should be the Director of Public Works or the
Correct.
commission, but it seems really that it's the Director of Public Works.
I would go with the Director of Public Works. We're
I
asking
agree.
we're asking that person to approve things, so they might as well also maintain the repairs and manage the repairs, you
Hey,
know?
Ken, are you still on here? Yeah, I see you're still there. Are you still listening? You're on mute if you're trying to reply.
Yeah, I just found it. What's up?
In your experience as a longtime member of the Board of Selectmen, does this sentence make sense to you? The developer's failure to perform needed repairs within a reasonable time when so requested by the Board of Selectmen may result in the town's undertaking the repairs and billing the developer for the cost of repairs. To me, that seems like that request comes from the Director of Public Works. Can you name a precedent where the Board of Selectmen is the body who tells a developer what to be doing with their construction?
Well, the question may be that we may have to go through the attorney, but I don't remember anything having taken place in my 10 years on that, being on the board.
I mean,
if it-
what, we're going to send, I mean, anybody could be on the Board of Selectmen, right?
Correct.
It's not a position that requires a specific kind of experience like construction or.
That is
So,
correct. Usually your highway, your DPW staff would be the experts in, the roads and drainage,
I'm
and
gonna,
things of that nature.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and just,
I'm thinking, Tira, though, if, so P and Z is holding the bond, right?
Mhm.
Don't we want the DPW director coming back to us as we hold the bond and telling us that, or telling Cindy, hey, this, we're notifying this developer that this is a failure, and if they don't,
so are
going
you
through-
suggesting, Dave, that the actual description of the hierarchy there is when so requested by the Planning and Zoning Commission upon the advice of the Director of Public Works?
Yeah, I think that's cleaner. I think that we're holding the bond and we need to be apprised of the situation from, in this case, Rich, right? Rich comes to us, say, this is failing, you're holding the bond, we need to know.
Yeah, this would be a question you might run by Rich Roberts.
Well, we run everything by Rich at the end.
The
so
reason why I'm thinking is because the first selectman signs for the driveway permit, and that could be a prime example where,
Mm.
the bond, so, and depending on, the language of the bond, and I'm not sure about that, who can invoke it or, something of that nature, and that could be quite a lengthy process. So you might want to look at who should be requesting it, because it may have to do with who's allowed to, request the bond to be invoked. Did that come from the
let me
Board of
just
Selectmen?
change this note a little bit.
Well, you go to C.
All right, that's a note that I'll understand when I see it later. All right, so the developer shall repair all defects in construction or operation. We just went through that. Are we boring you, Ms. Dunn?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
Come on, this is gripping. This is better than anything on television right now, except maybe endless Law and Order reruns on BBC America. C, no performance bond shall be released until such time as said maintenance bond has been accepted by the commission and posted with the town.
There you go.
No maintenance bond shall be approved by the commission unless said bond is in a form acceptable to the commission. The commission reserves the right to add conditions to the bond, which in the opinion of the commission are deemed necessary to indemnify against defective workmanship, materials, or design of the improvements. E, no maintenance bond shall be released by the commission until it has been in effect for a minimum of 1 year duration. And see, look at that, a minimum of 1 year duration here. Whereas about, see,
So
contradicting itself within the text, within the same page.
Yeah.
Right. So we made the correction.
We made the correction in the other section, and here is
Right.
evidence that that was the correct correction.
Right.
Okay. The commission shall release said bond only upon receipt of a favorable written report from the Director of Public Works or another qualified source retained by the town to inspect all approved and required public improvements, indicating that all improvements are free of defective workmanship, materials, or design, or that any defects have been corrected to their satisfaction. This inspection is not intended to relieve the developer of liability for any cause of action arising from a covert or overt defect. Okay. How do we feel about the description of maintenance bond other than the notes that we've already made? Does this raise any new questions?
Yeah, E pretty much takes out B, where it says the Board of Selectmen should stay within, like Dave said, stay within the commission. And then whatever is decided upon or is met, then it goes to the Board of Selectmen to sign off on it. Would that be correct?
That seems more correct. Does E render B redundant? Sometimes I definitely have to look at this with fresh eyes in the morning, but I see your point, John. Let's read those one after the other, B and E. The developer shall repair all defects in construction or operation during the period covered by the maintenance bond. Okay. The developer's failure to perform needed repairs within a reasonable time when so requested by, keeping it the Board of Selectmen right now, may result in the town's undertaking the repairs and billing the developer for the cost of repairs. That's B. E. No maintenance bond shall be released by the commission until it has been in effect for a minimum of 1 year duration. The commission shall release said bond only upon receipt of a favorable written report from the Director of Public Works or another qualified source retained by the town to inspect all approved and required public improvements, indicating that all improvements are free of defective workmanship, materials, or design, or that any defects have been corrected to their satisfaction. This inspection is not intended to relieve the developer of liability for any cause of action arising from a covert or overt defect. John, I am inclined to believe you, to agree with you that E is a better worded
Then
set
B,
than B and actually covers a little bit of A.
correct, correct.
I
So,
say strike B.
Does everybody
we
else
would-
think that same thing?
Yeah.
because we really could take and strike B. Because it's still got to come one way or the other. The only one that gets the final, that sign off on it is the Board of Selectmen. Now, if Kenny being in, his thought on that, but I'm looking at is, to me, B is, like, as you would say, could be redundant or whatever. But to me, it just doesn't being here a conflict in my mind. Maybe I'm looking at it a different way, but it doesn't make sense.
I mean, I'm making this sidebar note, guys. Are we in agreement? Because I think we are.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with striking B.
Wow, I just woke up. I
I
did
think
something
this,
right.
I think they're separate. I think one's defective, the defect is identified, the developer fails to perform the needed repairs within a reasonable time so that it's detailing the steps of notification from the selectmen from the DPW director. The E is how we release it after after it's been certified. So I think that B is for the first year, E is after that first year and how it's released. I
I
think
see what you're saying, Dave. I still think there's a lot of redundancy there, but I like your point. Let me see here. Let me change this note.
Is there any way you could mix B and, excuse me, B and E together? So it's like following it a step, because it always has to come back to what, anyway, like like Dave said earlier, we should be notified on anything by the Director of Public Works. It still, he should be bringing it to us first, so to speak. So now we can make those recommendations or whatever before it is turned over to the Board of Selectmen.
I
Would
agree.
that be
with John.
somewhat correct?
I think C should be I agree with John. C should be before B. I mean, C is talking, no performance bond shall be released until such time as said maintenance bond has been accepted by the commission and posted with the town. Almost like C should go to B, and then B starts talking about the maintenance bond. In B, you start talking about the maintenance
Yeah.
bond, and then C is the performance bond again, then D is the maintenance bond, E is the maintenance bond. It
Yep.
just seems out of sequence.
Yeah, I didn't
So-
even notice that. That's
Yeah, I
totally,
see what you're saying.
So B, you just take B and move it down to E and just move everybody else up. So like Dave just said, C becomes B, D becomes C, and B
Yeah, no,
becomes D.
I got it here, John.
No, I'm speaking, I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah,
too.
no, that's what we're all doing. That's what we do for these whole things. Okay, anything else on this? I think I have enough to work on this tomorrow, but I will take any further commentary right now.
The only other thing I had was, it mentions, and maybe it's just assumed, but the snow plowing. So the bond, I believe it was the maintenance bond has to include if it's not plowed. So the town hasn't accepted it. I just think that needs to be detailed a little bit better, that we're calling it out, and maybe they understand it. It sounds like there's been so few subdivisions that they need to know that they're plowing it for that year, that it's all in for that year on them. The town's not plowing it, the town's not doing anything to it.
So are you suggesting that here under A, we also include
Maybe it was up a little bit.
damage, damage because of improper maintenance?
I think Dave was saying that they have to provide the regular maintenance.
Yeah, they assume all regular maintenance for that year. It doesn't
I
really,
see, okay.
it doesn't clearly, it tells them they have to, their bond has to include snow plowing if they don't do it, for the town to go snow plow it. But it's really not clear that, hey, the town is not doing anything for a year. And maybe it's just assumed. Maybe I'm just looking at, maybe it's.
Well, it's possible that's under this standard agreement, yada, 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 right?
Yeah,
Because
but
that's
it's-
not in front of us. So let me put the note here.
Why don't you try to get a hold of Rich Benoit? Did the town plow Madison Avenue out?
Well, it's
Or
an
did-
accepted road, right? So that's a great question. What's the
Because
impact?
the road was accepted under those conditions to allow the building of 3 homes, but nothing was really said. I was under the assumption that the gentleman that's putting in the subdivision, he was responsible for keeping the road plowed. But there was nothing, I don't remember anything being in the recommendations or when we increased the bond and stuff like that. We just gave the authority to the town to accept it as a partial town road, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's still under performance bond. He hasn't even done enough to get to a maintenance bond yet. So that's like.
Correct.
Total.
So he should have been responsible for plowing plowing the road, correct?
Yeah.
Well, see, there we go again,
So, I mean, if you call it out, until he's in a maintenance bond, until we've accepted his performance bond, right? We've accepted the road, performance bond dissolves, maintenance bond is enacted. He has another year on that maintenance bond that he has to maintain it.
Correct.
Yep.
See, we just solved hopefully we solved another problem, but I mean, this is what this is all about. Now you know, we're trying to figure out the best way, but that makes a lot more sense, in my opinion, you know, I mean, did we, but the question is, my question is, did we, the town, plow Monahan Drive,
Madison.
Drive, Madison Ave, I'm sorry. Did we plow it? That's my question. So we need to know that, because if we, even though we released it partially to the town to do what they needed to do, did they go up and plow it? Where it should have been him taking care of it.
That is
Correct?
that is an excellent question, which I will ask Rich.
If I may,
You may.
I would agree that any maintenance on the road or plowing before that top coat is put on could result in damage by the town to the road. You know,
Correct.
going around catch basins and stuff, and we don't want that liability.
Well, I think that's part of the reason that yes, you guys are right. That's part of the reason why there is this intermediary period, right? So I'll follow up with Rich on that tomorrow.
Well, yeah, we need to know this, Tara, because did Rich have anybody say, okay, you gotta plow this road? Where it shouldn't have never been done by the town, like Kenny just said, is once our blade hits the road and something happens, guess we're responsible when we should be responsible.
Well, not really. I mean, if you look at it, we're to be compensated for doing that service because he didn't. So we're entitled to compensation, but that doesn't release his liability to that road under these regs. So
I don't think the town did that. I remember these conversations. I'm pretty sure that Rich did not plow that. We're waiting for the final top coat.
Well,
I
yeah,
would wager a bet that he didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm not a gambler either, but I sure know he wouldn't want to.
well, you don't know. The best thing to do is ask the question.
Yeah,
Then
no,
we'll
I'll
get-
ask him. I'll ask him tomorrow.
You know, that's the best way to find out, is ask the question, and it'll answer all our questions. You know, Brian and David could be right, I could be right, or Joe could be right, just sitting there minding his own business, you know, and stuff like that. But, you know, ask the question and see what the answer will be. No, we didn't do it. Okay, fine. Now we know. You know, I mean, right now it's uncertainty. In my mind, I could be saying the town did it.
Yeah,
know, they-
no,
they were
I've
up
got my follow-up for tomorrow when I go back through this. That'll
Okay.
be part of my follow-up. So
all
it's about
Sarah,
quarter up, guys, and
Eric, can I just ask Joe, can I be
Yeah.
excused? I gotta run.
Yeah, of course. I think we're just about wrapping up here anyway, Dave.
All right.
yeah, that was essentially what I was going to say. We've gotten through all this stuff on bonding, and then the next section is a very different stream of thought. Flood hazard areas and floodways. So that's a good place to break a little bit early. Since we're breaking a little bit early and Dave had to leave, we do have people who came in tonight. Kevin and Sean and NB, and there was somebody else, I think, Donald. I mean, it's not a public hearing. There's no like section for public comment, but we certainly invite people to ask questions when we can, if there's anything you guys want to observe or question about what you heard tonight. And you're all on mute, so you'd have to unmute yourselves. Yeah, I see that, Sean. Thanks. Okay, well, as always, guys, I think that was good work. I will, as is my habit, go in, take these. Go ahead.
Tara, before you kill this meeting, I would
Mhm.
greatly appreciate it if you could give me a quick call, please. I got a question I need to ask you.
Before I kill the meeting or
Yeah.
after we're done with the
After
meeting?
the meeting, after you kill this meeting, give me a quick call, please.
I will do that. No
Before
problem.
she can do that, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make
I'll
that
move.
motion. Yeah.
I'll second that John B. Lanky motion.
Motion
Thank
made
you,
by
Mr. Brian Santos.
Motion made by Mr. Lanky, seconded by Mr. Santos to adjourn the meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 8:49 p.m. Thanks.
Okay,
everyone.
guys, I will, I'll send you a doodle for the next one when I've got the revised draft ready.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Night.